Good evening. I'm Councillor Shamila Sivaraja, and I would like to welcome you to this extraordinary full council meeting. Before we start the formal agenda, I'm going to call for a moment of silence in respect of the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe, VE Day. We pay our respects to those who bravely fought for our freedom. The Council will be holding a beacon lighting ceremony at Reigate Park tomorrow, 8th May at 8 p.m. to commemorate VE Day. I now call for a minute silence. Thank you. Thank you. As this is an extraordinary meeting, there will be no public question time this evening in line with the Council Constitution. The next meeting when we will be accepting questions from the public is the full Council meeting scheduled for 16th July. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the council chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. This meeting being live streamed via the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there is no common functions available as part of this webcasting. The Council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done so in accordance with the Council's published data retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the chamber, they are consenting to their image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting and/or training purposes. Councillors are reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screens in the room, as these show what is being recorded and webcast. Cameras are currently set to capture you in seated positions, so please remain seated when speaking. Councillors have received an electronic copy and a paper copy of the agenda and paperwork for tonight's meeting. The public agenda and reports for this meeting are available on the Council's website. We will now start the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Yani, Councillor Yasmin Khan, Councillor Burke and Councillor Adenai.
Thank you. Are there any declaration of interest councillors wish to declare? Yep.
I'm an NHS public governor, so given it was mentioned in the papers, I should have declared it.
Thank you.
I'd like to declare that I'm a member of the West Sussex County Council.
I believe that I emailed it in on behalf of myself, Burgess and Lanza earlier today as a member of West Sussex County Council, personal non-prejudicial interest.
We are now on the main agenda item 3, local government reorganisations, joint proposal with Reigate and Banstead Borough Council. Before we start this item, I will explain the procedure for this evening meeting. I will firstly invite the Chief Executive, Ian Duke, to introduce report CEX/070 to councillors. This report was contained in the supplementary agenda. The leader of the council, Councillor Jones, will then move the report and recommendations. He will speak on the report and he will be given 10 minutes. The report will then be seconded by Councillor Chris Mullins, and he can either speak at that point or reserve the right to speak later in the debate. I will then bring in the opposition leader, Councillor Crowe, who will also have 10 minutes to speak on the report. I will then open up the meeting for the debate on the report. The recommendations. Both groups have provided me in advance with a list of speakers. I will invite them in the order provided. I will then ask if there are any further councillors who wish to speak. All councillors with the exception of both group leaders will have 5 minutes to speak on the item. Unlike standard full council meeting, councillors will also be able to ask a question or seek clarity on any aspect of the report. The Chief Executive will respond. At the conclusion of the debate, I will then allow the leader to have his right to reply. I will then call for a vote on the recommendation contained within the report. Please note that the full council this evening will not be taking the decision on whether the council agrees or not to submit the government a joint local government reorganisation proposal with Reigate and Banstead Borough Council. That decision is an executive one and will be taken by the Cabinet at its separate meeting taking place later tonight. Members of full council, so all those present here, will be providing a steer for the Cabinet to consider. Having explained the procedure, I will now ask the Chief Executive to present the report to the full council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors. By way of introduction, I wanted to set out the governance and process aspects of this report, which explains why the recommendations in front of you are shaped as they are, and the decision-making process in a bit more detail as described by the Mayor. As you're all aware, the government has announced its ambition to bring to an end two-tier local government in England. As an area with both a county council and a borough council, this affects Crawley. All councils affected, including Crawley, have received a statutory invitation from government to develop proposals for local government reorganisation. Councils are expected to work together to submit proposals back to government. The government will then consider these proposals before putting forward its chosen proposal or proposals for consultation. Following consultation, the government will then put in place the statutory measures to take forward reorganisation. Ultimately, therefore, local government reorganisation is a decision for government, but one that is informed by proposals it has asked councils to develop. On this basis, the advice received is that it is for Cabinet to decide on what proposals to submit, but given the significance of what we're putting in, it is right that proposals are first considered by full council to provide that steer to Cabinet prior to those submissions being made. We anticipate that this council will discuss local government reorganisation on up to 3 occasions over the coming months, including today, for the reasons I'll now talk to. The first milestone set by government was for councils to make interim submissions by the 21st of March, setting out their plans for any proposals that would then follow. This council made 2 such interim submissions. The first was a joint submission alongside all local authorities in West Sussex. The deadline for that final submission is the 26th of September. The second was a joint submission with Reigate and Banstead, which we look at today. The government has made clear that any such final submission for this proposal must meet the deadline for Surrey authorities, which is Friday the 9th of May, which is why we are having the special meeting of full council tonight. Now, this presents a challenge. Normally, officers would present members with all the available options at the same time to allow members to consider these in tandem and state their preference. But the differing deadlines that the government has set out for Surrey and Sussex makes this impossible to achieve today. To overcome this, the recommendations in front of you, both to full council and to Cabinet, are seeking support and agreement respectively for the submission of the joint proposal with Reigate and Banstead. But they are also explicit in stating that the Council is not stating its preference for this proposal over any that might emerge from our work with West Sussex. The intention is to allow members to be able to consider this proposal alongside those emerging from West Sussex at a later date. It is envisaged that the emerging options for a West Sussex proposal will be available for consideration in time for the July meeting of full council. They won't be finalised at that point, but emerging. This should present an opportunity for these to be considered alongside the proposal in front of you tonight, and officers will be working to that end. However, as the report sets out, there is a risk that the pace of the government's own decision-making processes may not align with that attention. The government could decide not to proceed with the submission that we're putting forward to Reigate, or we may be putting forward to Reigate and Banstead, in which case this submission would fall away in any case. Alternatively, the government may decide to undertake a consultation that includes the joint submission or any joint submission with Reigate and Banstead prior to the July meeting of full council. In such a scenario, the council will have an opportunity to state its preference through that consultation. The route through this decision-making process is therefore complex, and it's not within the council's full control, but there are differing ways to navigate this. And what's clear is that a decision to submit a joint proposal with Reigate and Banstead, should members decide that is what they wish to do, is the only way to keep this option on the table until such time as the West Sussex proposals emerge. So hopefully that explains the way the recommendations are shaped. A final point to make is members will have seen that a supplementary agenda has been published this afternoon. I just wanted to briefly touch on what is within that. It contains letters of support received to date for the joint proposal with Reigate and Banstead. These and any others received will be appended to the final proposal prior to being submitted. The only notable one I'm aware of that we are still expecting that is not in there is a letter of support from Surrey and Sussex Healthcare NHS Trust, but there may be others. Also contained is a document setting out the results of the Crawley Connection Survey that is referenced in the proposal being considered today. We've appended that because at the time of writing the proposal as it currently stands, that engagement had not been finalised. So it's there for transparency in terms of the final results. The changes are actually marginal to what's stated within the proposal and do not alter the thrust of the content as published, specifically that the main towns identified by residents in terms of connections remain Horsham, Hawley and Brighton, although there are changes in the order in which that is stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Michael Jones, Leader of the Council, you have 10 minutes to move the recommendation and speak on the report. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight, I'm addressing full council on proposals for the Cabinet to agree, after this meeting, a joint submission to Government with Reigate and Banstead Borough Council on devolution and local government reorganisation. There are quite a lot of misconceptions to dispel, which have sadly mainly come from the Leader of the Opposition and some of his Conservative colleagues who seem to feel it perfectly reasonable in the run-up to this meeting to throw around unsubstantiated statements and allegations like confetti. This is unhelpful when there is already a significant amount of complexity to begin with. Anything or anyone that claims we're going in with London or going into London or becoming a London borough is completely untrue. The new council created would also have nothing to do with ULEZ. Everyone's postal and geographical address will remain in Sussex. A lot of what we're doing with this submission, Madam Mayor, is about exercising some common sense. If we were to draw a line to make a council with a larger population size, and we were starting with a blank sheet of paper, would we think of going in with towns in and around Gatwick, such as Hawley and Red Hill, made more sense than reaching out to the Sussex market towns of Horsham, Billingshurst and East Grinstead? This is not the outrageous question that some tonight might claim it is. Madam Mayor, our whole system of local governance is based around a model first created over 135 years ago. The Victorians drew a line and decided it made most sense for us to be in with Chichester. That may well have made sense in that era when Crawley was merely a village rather than the largest town in West Sussex. Gatwick was a racecourse and the airplane wasn't to be invented for another 2 decades. But we live in a world transformed in that time. What made sense then based on ceremonial counties doesn't necessarily make sense now. Sometimes you have to look afresh to ensure, aside from tradition, you have something that works best for the people we serve. All we are doing is attempting to answer the question that if you have to draw the lines for a new council area, and the instruction from central government is that it has to be significantly larger than how we are arranged now in Crawley Borough, how would one draw that new boundary in a way that protects the existing identity of the area we represent? A boundary that also ensures that we go in with communities that share more in common with us and will maximise the economic prosperity and the most efficient planning and infrastructure that makes for successful, healthy communities. As we were putting this case together, it became increasingly clear to all of us involved that what we had was a very solid, compelling case that by its very strength should command very serious attention from the government when they see it. There is a strong economic and strategic planning argument as to why Crawley and Reigate and Banstead should be in the same unitary authority and therefore in the same mayoral strategic authority, which requires us to make this submission. It makes no sense that on the brink of Gatwick expansion, we put a hard boundary across what is one of the biggest economic areas in the region. It also makes no sense for the public services, transport and infrastructure we will need. We need to have some grown-up discussions about that, and that's what we're doing. I've previously written that this is a once-in-a-generation, if not once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get this right, and I stand by that. As far as devolution is concerned, our geography sits on the edge of the county, as obviously does Reigate and Banstead boroughs' geography. The population size of both is not so large that a new unitary authority couldn't sit on either side of the devolution arrangements. So it isn't even necessarily going to be the case that we would move out of the Sussex combined mayoral authority when the final decision is taken by government. That would be a decision for them. But, Madam Mayor, it is clear that having 2 directly elected mayors dividing this economic functioning area would be detrimental to the future economic prospects of this town, and it would impact on growth. The submission makes the point that the proceeds of growth far exceed any efficiencies to be gained. There are also some wider public service arguments for considering this option, in particular health, given that our acute services are based in Red Hill and the Sussex-Surrey boundary creates issues in terms of health and social care provision for our residents. And it gets in the way of preventative approaches that might reduce future health costs, the single biggest draw on public finances. The submission recognises, however, that this is not a straightforward option, given the current way boundaries are set and the processes being used by government and civil service to drive this agenda. The first issue is the different timeframes for Surrey and Sussex. By submitting this bid now, we are seeking to try and reach a point when the town and the council can see this approach alongside any West Sussex options so a view can be taken. The second is population. As at 276,000, this is at the lower end of what the government is asking for and far away from 500,000. However, the government has stated it will consider exceptions, and we believe the economic case justifies this being considered as such because it will easily outstrip any potential savings otherwise obtained. I believe from everything that ministers and their advisers have said to me directly and to other councillors that they are open-minded and want councils to put sensible geographies to them, and that there is more flexibility on numbers than may have originally been suggested in the original white paper. Now, I think we have to take them on their word about that. The third is how this impacts the wider Surrey approach. It requires government to first decide whether there is a case here and then to open up the conversation as to how Crawley could be accommodated. There are different options here, but the core question needs to be addressed first. Fourth is the potential disaggregation of county services across two counties. However, the approach set out in the submission talks to a shared services approach that would address any short-term risks. Longer-term planning is needed within county services such as adult and children's services because whilst aspects of these services require scale to achieve economies of scale, other aspects benefit from more localised and integrated working to produce efficiencies and quality. The question is then what to retain at scale and what to deliver more locally. The proposed submission does therefore address the complexities and sets out a way forward. The report does not seek to ask members to state a preference for this submission over what might emerge from the collaborative discussions we continue to hold with councils across West Sussex. As we move forward, we are very much committed to further public engagement, and indeed some preliminary work has already been done, as people will see in the order paper. We anticipate undertaking more engagement later in the year. The aim of the work being undertaken within West Sussex is to undertake engagement over the summer ahead of any decision. The pace at which Surrey authorities have been asked to do this means that we've only been able to do a limited amount to date by asking residents which towns people are connected to. By far the three mentioned were Hawley, Brighton and Horsham, which I think just reinforces the fact that due to its positioning, this town can sit in different places. Ideally, we would want residents to be able to consider the Reigate and Banstead options alongside the West Sussex options, but it all depends on the government's timeframes and decision-making. While all of this is going on, our work as a council is continuing in partnership with all of the major West Sussex councils, county, districts and boroughs to also look at those Sussex-based solutions. But I will stress again, what we're voting on tonight is not the final decision if and when the Cabinet decide later tonight. The purpose of the submission is to keep the Reigate and Banstead option open until such time as the Council's able to consider all of the options available to it and take a view as to which is the better for its town and its future. So in concluding, at least my initial speech, Madam Mayor, the submission being considered tonight is a strong argument and it is as solid as I can remember ever being involved in putting together in my time in local government. However, I look forward to hearing the debate, what members think, and respond where appropriate at its conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Chris Mullins, I believe you are seconding the recommendation. In doing so, please confirm if you're speaking now or 5 minutes. If you confirm if you're speaking now for 5 minutes or reserving your right to speak later on the debate.
I would like to reserve my right to speak later, and yes, I am seconding the move.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan Crowe, Leader of the Opposition, you have 10 minutes to speak on the report and recommendation. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. There is a wise saying of, when in a hole, stop digging. And yet the very fact that this meeting has been called and all of us are here is because the council's leader and his cabinet want to keep digging. You know, sometimes it's better just to admit that one has made a mistake and climb out of that hole rather than plough on. And yet here we are. It's important to note that there was nothing in the Labour Party manifesto at the general election about the forcing of the mergers of local authorities. There is no mandate for it, but we have no choice on it, whether we like it or not. But where we do have a somewhat limited choice is what we request to government as to the footprint we prefer our new unitary authority to have. In doing so, we have to abide by the government's criteria when submitting proposals. And if we want those proposals to be taken seriously, any exceptions to the criteria need to have very strong evidence. Now, I take the view that I will follow the evidence as to what area will make the best new council for us. But what we have here before us tonight is evidence being created to try to sell a predetermined preference that I strongly suspect many in the Labour group actually have, but which for political expediency they're not yet admitting. Now, we're being told that we were duty-bound to consider all options as an excuse not to dispense with this proposal now. But let's be quite frank. This is a desperate and cynical attempt to try to bounce Crawley into Surrey via the back door. Now, I'm of the view that this Surrey idea is simply wasting time, it's wasting energy and it's wasting money on a proposal that won't produce any savings, it doesn't meet the government's criteria by a country mile, and it will cost a huge amount to set up. And if it happens, it will lead to major service cuts and soaring council tax in order to pay for it. But I'm also aware that if the government doesn't act sensibly or rationally, and let's be frank, given their track record so far, that's not beyond the realms of possibility, then by voting for this proposal tonight for Crawley to be included on the submission, we risk this becoming a done deal before the West Sussex proposals are fully finalised and considered by the government. Why should we take that risk? The government have put Surrey on a faster timetable than Sussex, and there's a real risk the government could agree a Surrey proposal with Crawley as part of it by this summer, and therefore by default we would fall off the West Sussex submission. Is it really worth taking that risk under the pretence of, oh, let's keep all options open? I don't think so. And we don't know yet what options within West Sussex will be drawn up by all the current councils within it. So I don't yet know what option would be best for Crawley. But what I do know is that all options that keep Crawley within its historic county of West Sussex will be better than being bounced into Surrey. I know that right now. The people of Crawley know that right now. But why is it that all the Labour councillors don't seem to know that now? I have to say that if some people's judgment is so bad on this, it doesn't give me so much confidence that it will be good on anything else. What next? Are we going to introduce parking charges for people who already pay to see shows at the Wharf or already pay to use the K Leisure Centre? Oh, sorry, what's that? Oh, what is coming? Oh dear, oh well. But there you go. The disconnect between this council's leadership and the people of Crawley is getting wider and wider. Now, we're getting used to the council's leadership airbrushing out so many of its mistakes. But they've really excelled themselves this time because, incredibly, this proposal for Crawley and Reigate and Banstead actually airbrushes out an entire district council and its 90,000 residents. Tandis District Council is entirely to the east of Reigate and Banstead and does not border any other Surrey council. So this means they have to be in the same council as Reigate and Banstead. So what's their view on this proposal? Well, the fact is they're not interested at all. But strangely, I don't seem to be noticed reading that in the report for tonight's meeting. Funny that, isn't it? Now, the arguments that are being presented for joining with Surrey, they're tenuous at best. The report before us, it highlights the economy. It makes bold claims that the economic benefits would more than cover the additional disaggregation costs. We should just get that right in the report, that merging all the services across county boundaries would create. But it's simply a claim. There is zero evidence that absorbing Crawley into Surrey creates any economic benefit to Crawley whatsoever. It's very obvious that the two new councils, north and south of Gatwick, would talk to each other, as would the mayors of Sussex and Surrey, with the Sussex one being elected next year and the Surrey one being elected in 2028. And by the way, there's another downside, because if Crawley was to join Surrey, then Crawley will be left behind waiting a further 2 years for a mayor, while the rest of Sussex and the funding that comes with it, they will be going full steam ahead from next year. Now, let's look at what the ultimate so-called prize is. The Surrey proposals doesn't stack up, it doesn't meet the government's criteria by a country mile, and it's not wanted in Crawley. So what is the Labour motivation? Well, the leader actually mentioned it earlier on, and he tried to downplay it. Let's be honest here, the only reasons this has come forward, those reasons are purely political. And I am of the firm belief it's part of a two-part plan that's all about maximising Labour political control of Crawley's local government, rather than what is best for Crawley. Now, in Reigate and Banstead, the Green Party, they've got 13 councillors, it's larger than my group here, and there's also 2 Labour councillors there as well. And part one of this plan is to have Crawley's 25 Labour councillors lead a coalition of Labour and the Greens to politically control our town, leading to even more anti-motorist policies that we have locally. And then part two, well, that involves us being absorbed into what will become neighbouring London, under the permanent jurisdiction of the London Mayor. However much they deny it, they know that is their end game, and some of us here can see it a mile away. Now, in my 2 decades as a councillor, I have rarely seen such united opposition as I have to this proposal. And that opposition isn't just from people like me, who are Conservative supporters, it's from people I know who tend to support Labour, and people I know who support other parties, and people who may be floating voters. It's young, it's old, it's people born and raised here, and it's people who've moved here. I can't ever recall such a diverse coalition of Crawley residents who are all united in their opposition to Crawley joining a Surrey council. Now, there's been a local petition, that's opposing this proposal and calling for a vote of Crawley residents residents before any change of a Surrey council or joining one takes place. And this evening, about half an hour before this meeting, it reached 1,000 signatures. It was started just 12 days ago by someone that I don't know, when I was the 4th person to sign it. And yet it's taking off day by day. I have received a significant amount of correspondence from Crawley residents, not just from my own area, from across the town, and they are all opposed to this plan. And as well as the petition, there's also been a poll on a local, perhaps sometimes disreputable Facebook group in Crawley, and I appreciate that's unscientific, but out of 900 votes cast, 87% were opposed to Crawley joining Reigate and Banstead, with only 6% in favour. Crawley's people are speaking with one voice, and they're saying that Crawley should be in a West Sussex council and not in with a Surrey council. Now, if Crawley Labour councillors think Surrey is so great and allow their political prejudices of West Sussex to cloud their judgment, well, they're very welcome to move over there, but they're not taking Crawley with them. We can stop this proposal tonight, but if we don't, we're putting our town at great risk. And I, for one, will not be an apologist for when Crawley starts losing services like our libraries, thanks to the massive service cuts that will happen if we end up joining a Surrey council. Crawley is an important part of West Sussex, and Sussex won't be druv. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. I will now open up the debate to the floor, and as stated, I will use the list of 12 speakers provided by the groups. Then bring in any other members. We will start with the first 3 speakers of Councillor Hilton, followed by Councillor Pritchard, then Councillor Jaggard. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have quite a prepared speech, but now I've heard Councillor Crowe's contribution, I might have to change one or two things. Councillor Crowe, just in response quickly, it's not a done deal. The timetable isn't actually one after another, I believe. And Councillor Crowe put great faith in evidence-based when his last, well, quite a fanciful allegation about our motives. I don't really like being told about my motives. I'll tell you what my motives are. My politics is all about Crawley. My mum and dad came in the 50s. I believe in the new town ideal, and all my interest is getting the best deal for Crawley. As it happens, it agrees with my Labour Party politics as well. But there's absolutely no thought about wider implications, as Councillor Crowe says. And, you know, it kind of insults the intelligence of us and insults the intelligence of the town that you kind of go on about that. I would say, though, I do support the submission of this proposal. Status quo is not an option. It's all about options and opportunities going forward. And in the end, the final decision will be made by the government. Unfortunately, it's important to note it's a joint submission. Timing is decided along the side of the West Sussex bid, and I would like to support it on a number of reasons. First of all, although there's talk in the white paper about a 500,000 population, I do believe there's potential movement, and the size of this particular submission is very similar to other unity authorities who are in existence, which shows these kind of authorities can work. And the smaller the authority is, the better it is for Crawley. Because that kind of size preserves our heritage as a new town. People are proud of this town and what it's developed from that post-war ideal of good housing, plentiful work, a good place to live for families to bring up their families, green spaces. And if Alf Pegler was here today, he'd want the best deal for Crawley, because I had the privilege of serving with Alf Pegler on both the Borough Council and the County Council, and he was a fantastic ambassador for this town. And I know what Alf will be saying today: get the best deal for your town, get your best deal for the people. And we've developed into that kind of town, and I'm really proud. And the thing about Crawley is we don't always blow our own trumpet. It's a dynamic, progressive town, and sometimes we identify it very closely. And yeah, we'll still be in Sussex. We'll be for postal and ceremonial purposes. I've lived and worked and studied all over Sussex. I'm a big Sussex cricket fan. But it's the town I mainly identify with. So that's the first reason. The The second reason is Gatwick Airport. It's the world's biggest single runway in the country. Airport expansion is likely. There's lots of challenges for us. This represents a way of developing that economic powerhouse, which, compared to other regions, is equivalent of Milton Keynes, £13 billion, according to the report. And with various challenges of infrastructure, growth, climate, and environmental considerations, it's something we can't ignore. And it's a shame that nothing about Gatwick Airport has been raised within Councillor Crow's first submission. We are at a crossroads. We can't stop where we're going because the status quo is not an option, but we've got a couple of routes to take, and we're prepared to take a look at both of them. We could look at West Sussex, but although it's seen as a historical county, it is a Victorian construct, 40 years, many years before the growth of the aeroplane and the motor car. So I think we need to look outside the box. And I think Henry Ford, I shouldn't really be, as a socialist, quoting the capitalist, but the phrase is, if you always do what you've done, you always get what you got. And I think that's pretty true. So look below the headlines, look at the options, keep the door open. This is a good once-in-a-generation opportunity for us. I support the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I cannot understand where Councillor Crowe is going with this. This is a proposal as a seed proposal of looking at Reigate and Banstead and this council being in one unitary authority. It doesn't say that it should form the unitary authority. It says there are lots of options around this, including authorities that encompass other authorities around us. It doesn't say where administratively this joint unit will be, whether it's under the Surrey Mayoral Authority or the West Sussex Mayoral Authority. It just makes the case that Reigate and Banstead and Crawley are linked together by a huge economic centre, that is Gatwick Airport, and that economic centre shouldn't be split. It explores options around us being linked with Tandridge, with Mole Valley, with Horsham. There's all sorts of options there. Without this motion tonight, us being combined with Reigate and Banstead, which is inherently sensible, is off the cards. What happens after tonight, if we do pass this, is all options are still on the table. You can build the unitary authorities in a myriad different ways, none of which has been looked at or decided. And then Councillor Crowe goes on to say that we're being somehow coming to London. We're 20 miles from the border of the London area. The border of the London area is 11 miles from the centre. London would have to get hugely bigger to encompass us in any way at all. It's absolutely absurd, his social media postings and his press postings recently and what he said in this chamber. But I really support this motion just to keep the cards on the table, and let's decide later what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. I don't support this unitary plan. It's a move away from local representation and a move towards a more distant control, away from the people and their neighbourhoods, making things bigger, more clumsy, unwieldy, and in my opinion it's being rushed through, hence this extraordinary meeting. It's been rushed at an unseemly pace with the final decision taken away from us and with little interest for local feelings. So to this specific joint proposal, I was born in Redhill. I grew up in the Reigate area. I lived there for 30 years. I know it very well. Gatwick Airport was in Surrey until 1974 when the county boundary was moved, and it was moved to give greater balance across the southeast. But the Gatwick Diamond is a relatively new idea. It has some merit, particularly for those towns and villages south of the M25. And I can see that there may be some economic benefits, but I'm sure these benefits can I'm not sure that these benefits can only be achieved by joining Reigate and Banstead. We work closely with our neighbour now. We continue to work closely with them in the future. Indeed, the report states that discussions for closer ties started before this devolution agenda. There is no hard boundary between Surrey and Sussex. That's nonsense. People and jobs move forward, flow both ways. Anyway, last night I listened to the debate at Reigate Town Hall. It was very interesting. Their residents' concerns were the centre of all the councillors' comments. All councillors there supported the 3 unitary plan in Surrey, which does not include Crawley. That's where they spent most of the time, on the stuff that did not include Crawley. These councillors from the north of the M25 saw little reason in joining us. They looked towards Epsom and Ewell. Those in Smallfields and to the east were more worried about the drive for urbanisation and the environmental impacts that this proposal might bring. Several were concerned about the huge debt in Woking. But it was interesting that all councils referred to the consultation that they ran specifically on this plan. On the whole, residents were not in favour of joining Crawley, stating in most cases they looked at other Surrey towns for shopping, restaurants, entertainment. Only 9% of their residents thought that joining Crawley was the good plan, was their preferred option, only 9%. But most significantly, the residents had been asked specifically on their views for joining Crawley. Their views were key to the discussion. Crawley residents haven't been asked about joining Reigate and Banstead and moving to Surrey. Some wishy-washy survey about some other thing is not a survey about joining a unitary authority with Reigate and Banstead. So this whole reorganisation has been put forward with conflicting timescales at a very fast pace by central government, denying residents the opportunity to give their views. It fails to look at more sensible options and needs of our residents, taking democracy away from councillors who know their residents. Many of our residents fear that local government will become more remote, and they do not want to be part of Surrey. Listening to the debate, it was interesting that they referenced that Hawley had a town council and some also had parish councils. If this were to happen, Crawley would have additional tier of complexity and bureaucracy and crucially costs rather than the reducing costs that you keep saying. And it's important that our residents are at the heart of any decision. So I looked at our council tax bands. For Band D in Crawley, it's £2,306. In Reigate and Banstead, £2,449. But in Hawley, where there's also a town council, it's £2,504. So almost we can guarantee that by joining Surrey, it would result in our residents having to pay more for council services. I moved here because it was cheaper than Reigate, and I'm quite sure our residents will be shocked if their council tax suddenly rocketed a couple of £100 a year. It seems that Reigate and Banstead are not enamoured by the proposal to join with Crawley. When it came to the vote at the end of their meeting, 18 for putting the joint proposal forward, 15 against and 4 abstentions. So actually the majority were not in favour of this proposal at all. So in conclusion, I believe that we will continue to reap the benefits from Gatwick Airport, as we've always done, but while remaining in Sussex.
Well said.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need to remember why our town was formed. Out of the economic chaos of the war came a vision to build a better community that delivered good jobs, safe neighbourhoods, good healthcare, and an education to match. The vision of a secure future is epitomised by our motto, I grow and I rejoice. This proposal, which considers putting the Gatwick Diamond at the heart of a future unitary authority, puts growth first. Growth which increases the attractiveness of Manor Royal as a place to do business, which increases the jobs available to communities across our town and improves public services and facilities for all. In this chamber, we are all stewards of our wards. It is not about partisan politics. It is about making sure that we are giving an opportunity to explore all options, to make a decision that delivers the best outcomes for our constituents, whether they be social, economic, health, or educational. For this reason, I support both the submission of this proposal and continued efforts to develop proposals for local government reorganisation across West Sussex and Sussex as a whole. Taking a strategic perspective enables us to consider how we can increase our local economic growth by unlocking opportunities. Whether or not the government decides that will be based on efficiencies and harmonisation at the heart of the Gatwick Diamond remains to be seen. But it is important we demonstrate a commitment to increasing the attractiveness of our area as a place to grow, a phrase that our founding councillors held so dear. Thank you.
Councillor Charlton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't help but feel, what I want to do with what I want to say is address sort of 3 points here, but that Councillor Crowe has made or tried to put across. I found it on the basis of unknown depths of paranoia, I might say. Interestingly enough, I mean, Duncan says here, Councillor Crowe says, sort of implies that somehow we've made up the figures, or we've fudged the figures on this to make it fit, as it were, the shape that we want it to be, ignoring the fact that actually we've had at least 2 organisations, Capital Coast and also the Gatwick Diamond organisation, endorsing our proposal here. And it is only a proposal at this stage. It's a plan to look into. To reiterate that once again, it's not a done deal. It's not even within our gift to make it a done deal. It's very much down to the Minister of State at the end of the day. Anyway, the point is, before I stray too far, is that business, remember them, Duncan? Business, they endorse this. They think it's a good idea. They think having a unitary authority covering an entire area that is economically vibrant makes sense. Now, perhaps Duncan's taking his model from a former leader who's had some words about how he felt about business. Anyway, moving on. A conspiracy, again, the depths of paranoia here. We're full of conspiracies, aren't we? As if, though, Duncan has no conspiracy to try and consolidate his Conservative control, except that if you look around, where are the Conservatives in control? For sure, at the county level, but only because we haven't had elections. Everywhere else, it's Liberal Democrats and Greens and so on. Whichever way you looked at it, Duncan, you're not going to get a look in edgeways. So, we're not looking at this as any kind of power gambit on our behalf. It doesn't matter to us terribly much in that respect. And the final, a huge piece of paranoia based on what evidence, I don't know, and I invite Duncan to provide some evidence, if he wishes here, of the final part of this conspiratorial jigsaw. Has everybody got their tinfoil hats on, by the way? Is that somehow we want to join up and be part of London and the great snaggly dragon, fiery dragon of London's mayor, Mr. Sadiq Khan. Dear, oh dear. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what there is to fear in a perfectly rational and decent mayor. But to even suggest it is beyond absurd. As my colleague here, Stephen says, we are 20 miles from the borders of London at the moment. It doesn't make sense. And in any case, if you think about it, even if you put half a brain towards it, you realise it's like, well, when is this all supposed to happen? Because the proposal in front of us does not contain any, I mean, if you'd like to point to me any words in there that says, ultimately, we want to be we are London Borough, please do. I couldn't, and I've been through the document several times. And if it's not in the document, is there maybe another secret document somewhere which says that, we're going to whip out at the last moment and say, oh, actually, this is our cunning plan all along. It's just wouldn't happen. It's not part of this proposal. It's not part of this proposal. It's not in there. There is no time, no money, nor would the Minister of State even accede to something like that. You know, so for anybody listening, please, it's nonsense. And it's evidence-free as well. Again, you know, perhaps if you have some evidence, I'd love to hear that. And there's a couple of other things while I've got time, just very briefly. Part of being a historic part of Sussex, Duncan paints a convincing picture, and I'd like to offer him the prize of Bard of Sussex on this one, where he suggests that somehow with this dreamy ideal, you can almost see the Haywains and people, you know, the residents of Sussex, of Crawley, wandering round in their smocks in the good old Sussex, as it were. Crawley is a new town. For sure, Crawley, Ifield, you know, the old villages they've existed for a long time. Crawley is a new town. It owes more to South London and South Londoners than it does to Sussex. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Imitiaz Khan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I looked at the aims and benefits of the devolution and local government reorganisation, and essentially they stated that we wanted enhanced efficiency, we wanted service delivery, and we wanted economic growth. The aim overall is to reduce the administration overheads and deliver services efficiency. That's what we're all here to do, and that's what we're trying to achieve. What does this proposal actually achieve? With regards to the population, it does not meet this requirement. And it's admitted by the leader of the opposition himself that in his own speech that it does not meet this requirement. I understand that there is some flexibility in this issue, but as it stands at the moment, it doesn't actually meet it. And it's far short of the 500,000, literally 56% of it. So it's not even met that. Service delivery, arguably, wouldn't it be best to sit within West Sussex where the services are? Within West Sussex County Council, Crawley would fit perfectly well within that and deliver certain services. Economic growth, we keep going on about Gatwick Diamond, and when we're talking about Banstead and we're talking about Reigate, Gatwick Diamond is part and parcel of Crawley. So whether we're with West Sussex or we go to Banstead, that's our little gem that we have, and we can nurture that and we can discuss that. So adding that is no benefit. What does Reigate bring? What does Banstead bring? That's what I want to hear. What does seem evident so far from all the discussions with the local populations that we've had, we've actually gone out and talked to our residents to see what they have to say about this issue. And the majority of them are not happy about this. Not just necessarily the fact that you've come up with this proposal, but no one's been discussing it with them. No one's consulted them about this. And they are really upset because that's a very part and parcel of our democratic process. When we make proposals like this, we need to talk to our residents, the people we're here to represent, the public. And that hasn't been done here. And you've rushed this proposal through. You've called us here for this full council extraordinary meeting, and you're going to run it through cabinet. And as Councillor Hilton said, it's not a done deal. But at the end of this, I'd like to see what votes come from the Labour Party. I'll be surprised if any of you abstain, and I'll be completely surprised if any of you don't support it. You're all going to support it. We know that. So from that aspect, it's a done deal from the Labour Party. Just a point to note, on the Surrey website itself, Surrey has submitted a final plan. Yeah? Namely, they want East and West Surrey unification. There's no sign of Crawley and Reigate and Banstead in their proposal. This is on their website. Yeah, this is Surrey County Council proposal. And as Councillor Jaggard pointed out, Reigate and Banstead themselves have voted against this proposal. Why are we flogging a dead horse? Why are we wasting our time on this issue? Summary of the issues, there was a letter dated 21st of March, page 64 within this document, and it said, we support this, and we wrote a letter to the Right Honourable Member Jim Moham, MP for Minister of State and Local Government. On page 64, it says, we support this. We, well, no one on this side of the table supported it, and from the talks we've had with our residents, none of them have supported it. So I don't know who this we is, and I'd like to hear who this we is, because that letter went out saying we support this, we do not support this. So I'd like to know who said that. Be aware of the wants and needs of your residents who you represent. Yeah, this proposal, yeah, fine, it'll go through. At the end of the day, you're elected members, and the people who you represent are watching this live stream. They're watching what you're going to do today, and they're going to watch how you're voting on this issue. And the only thing that they're really upset about is not that this is a good proposal or a bad proposal. You didn't consult them. Let that message thinking, you should have talked to them, and you didn't. And you've upset a lot of people because of that. And like I said, the population criteria wasn't met. It was way short of it, and that was disappointing. That's all I have to say about this, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Yes, well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I start from the point of view that local government has been around for a long, long time, and there's always been local government reorganisations in that time. Remember, years ago, there used to be tiny little rural district councils dotted around Sussex and all the other places in England, urban district councils. They all got amalgamated into bigger authorities. In 1965, the number of London boroughs has just about halved. And even in 1974, there were reorganisations. And okay, it might have caused a bit of an inconvenience to a few people, but at the end of the day, everyone woke up the day after and life continued as normal. And so, I think that some of the statements being made tonight, don't seem to be very constructive in that they seem to be more geared towards alarming people, our residents, than actually putting forward constructive arguments. For example, Councillor Jaggard says that in Reigate and Banstead they have a Hawley Town Council and 2 parish councils. So it's a given that Crawley would have a town council, but it's not a given that Crawley would have a town council. The residents would have would have a say on that. There has to be a certain number of signatures, I believe, to support a petition for that to go ahead. So, but saying that and then saying, this is going to increase his council taxes, so it's absolutely, definitely going to happen, come what may. It's just there to alarm people, I think, especially at a time when a lot of people are feeling financial pressures. And I have to say that I do support what the government's doing with reorganisation. I think if it leads to economic growth, prosperity, and speeds up planning and gets more homes built, then it's going to be a good thing. But that's not to say that whatever happens, I won't have some concerns because I will. And this isn't something that's forced on us, and we have to acknowledge that Crawley is unique in Sussex and Surrey in many, many ways. And I don't really want us to lose that uniqueness. And that's why I don't get annoyed with some of the statements that are made. But when Councillor Crowe says that the whole of Crawley has spoken as one voice, well, I'm sorry. I'm a resident of Crawley as well. I've been a resident of Crawley since 1968. I'm also a resident of Sussex. And come what may, we will still be part of Sussex when all the things that we enjoy from our great county, like the South Downs, the South Coast, the High Weald, the Low Weald, and all the countryside and the historic towns and villages that we can go and visit. We'll still be Sussex. We'll still be, well, not exactly in this part of the world, be Sussex by the sea, but you get my gist. So I think we need to look at this a bit more constructively and acknowledge that, in actual fact, what we're trying to do is get the best out of this that we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I need to listen to my colleague, Mr. London, more. And thank you for the opportunity to speak, and despite being someone who's come to Crawley relatively recently, both as a resident and more recently as a councillor who I'd say is proud to represent where I live, I think I've come to understand a little bit and respect and admire how the community has come together that we're all a part of and that we're all proud to be a part of. There have been various generations, as we know, coming to Crawley. Those that came from the war-damaged city, the urban areas, those that came out for the hope and the chances that we've heard discussed tonight. We've had the generations of the 70s and the 80s that have come and provided the wonderful diversity and mixed heritage of our town. And more recently, we've got our arrivals that are coming in to Forge Wood, who
who themselves are building their own communities out there and thriving communities. Now, we've got a responsibility here tonight. All of us here have a responsibility, both here, now, and in the very near future. Crawley is a fantastic community that truly tries to live up to the motto that we've heard already tonight: I grow, I rejoice. I cannot say that I will not be sad to see that many of the ways in which this town's independence has thrived will probably be compromised by any of the mergers into a unitary authority. But we have to seek the best way ahead, and we have to constantly keep going back again and again to one question: what is best for the residents of Crawley? And that is choice. The nature of the timetabling, as we know, means that different areas are coming up with different schedules. And if we go back to that key question, what is best for Crawley? Choice. We must ensure that all options are considered with calm and rational heads. We remember we are a community built with diverse roots from around the country, around the globe. And we have a heritage and a responsibility that comes with that. We do not jettison possibilities or options for emotional reasoning, or that, for at best, that might be obscure points, fantastical reasoning even, or nefarious allegations. Those, I'm afraid, must be set aside. We go back to our moral compass and key question: what is best for Crawley? And I say again, it's choice. Regardless of whether it's business mergers, schools joining into multi-academy trusts, or, as we are today considering, reorganisation of local government, I find it very peculiar that I'm saying this across the floor: choice, choice, choice is what we have to have. Yet quite simply, we do not close down possibilities. All possibilities must be considered. And if this is not submitted, we close down choice. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I will say I will be voting for this. I will be voting for this to ensure that we have a range of options available. A range that will consider issues of economic well-being and the provision of services. And these have to be paramount when we go back to considering what is best for the citizens of Crawley. I think it would be quite frankly inappropriate to shut down possibilities that might benefit our families, our residents, and all of our citizens. Do not shut down possibilities. Do not shut down choice. Keep all the options open, please, and support the submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And a lot of the case for Reigate and Banstead is made upon economic grounds, and I just wanted to make some references to that. Referring first of all to business rates, consequential upon the airport, I do believe that those business rates, in terms of generating prosperity, whichever solution you come up with, they're not going to make an awful lot of difference. And one of the reasons for that is that business rates are fundamentally redistributive. It's a policy I support, because I don't think an area should be overly endowed with business rates through an accident of geography. Another point I'd make is that while both Crawley and Reigate and Banstead are in the Gatwick Diamond, if you're arguing from a Gatwick Diamond perspective, there's another 5 districts and boroughs which could be included, as well as two county councils in any such reasoning. And it is important to come back to the point that in any local government reorganisation, the government won't tolerate solutions that leave what they call islands, that is, isolated local authorities. In this case, Tanbridge would be an isolated local authority. Huge economic benefits referred to in the report, but there isn't any real evidence there to support the assertion that having a particular local government boundary would generate increased economic growth. Indeed, our main report does note that there has been a 10% growth, economic growth since 2022 in the Reigate and Banstead Crawley area. But it also says, despite the local government arrangements, I mean, equally, one could challenge whether or not that's the case. One can challenge to what extent a local government boundary stimulates or hinders economic growth. Indeed, I'm sure I've heard the leaders say in various forums that business doesn't recognise local government boundaries, and I would agree with that particular perspective. But the fact that Reigate and Banstead and Crawley have demonstrated such strong growth with existing governance arrangements is significant. It far outpaces UK growth. The proposal does introduce extra complexity. I don't think that a hard local government boundary impedes growth. I would expect, the government would expect our mayors to work together. I mentioned just 2 forums where they're going to do this. One is the Council of Nations and Regions, where every mayor has a seat. The other is the Mayoral Council for England, where every mayor has a seat. But in reality, they will work together to stimulate economic growth on a cross-boundary basis. The population base of this proposal, 275,000, is way short of government guidance. And referring to some of the community aspects now, in the main report, we've got a survey from Reigate and Banstead which looks at actual movements of citizens between Reigate and Banstead and elsewhere, and notes that in the last 12 months only 6% travelled to Crawley town centre actually travelled. This contrasts with the Crawley survey, which indicates a willingness for Reigate, from Crawley citizens to travel to Reigate and Banstead, and it's in the 35 to 40% range. That's the difference between declared willingness and actual events, people actually travelling. There's a big difference between the two. I note that the proposal, the submission we're proposing, is quite supportive for Gatwick Airport expansion and indeed west of Ifield, and some people might need to consider that. I just want to scale some of the aspects of this because I think some of the scale is lost on some people. Adult social care, children's social care. Some individual caseloads, and I mean individual caseloads, can cost 6 figures per annum. 1% on Crawley Borough Council tax only raises £75,000. I want to impress upon you the scale of the services that we're talking about delivering. I do support the general local government reorganisation agenda. It should have been in the manifesto, but it wasn't. But the idea of moving to unitary local government has worked well in Scotland and Wales. It was done in the mid-1990s. And the only way to avoid making revenue savings ultimately in these arrangements is to make a decision, a political decision not to do so, because you don't need 12 licensing departments across Sussex as just one example, do you? Now, the Deputy Prime Minister rightly said that we can no longer afford the luxury of 2-tier local government because the evidence is clearly out there. And therefore, we need to create larger structures still respecting community identity. But, for example, Brighton and Hove used to be 2 unitary authorities, but they're 2 authorities, but they're a single one. This idea is 30 years behind the clock. You're talking about building bigger boroughs instead of true local government reorganisation.
Councillor Lannan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Local government reorganisation doesn't come around very often. I wasn't alive the last time the borders were tinkered with in West Sussex and Surrey, and I probably won't be around for the next opportunity after this. It determines who will deliver our services and helps identify our sense of place, i.e. what is Crawley. Now, I, for one, was quite keenly calling for local government reorganisation. I was getting fed up with all our borders being built upon without Crawley getting a direct say on it, and I'm quite happy going down the unitary route, as I think it does remove duplication and it makes it simpler for residents to know who's responsible for services. So overall, I was quite glad that this was happening. The question now is, how should we respond? As I said, this is probably going to be unchanged for the next 50 years, and we need to look at it with that point in mind. We don't need to think about what the costs are going to be over the next year or two, but what's going to serve our residents for the next 50 years. Now, Crawley is an outlier. It's a lot of amazing, wonderful things. It's urban, it's a 24/7 working town, it's diverse and it's growing. But Crawley isn't a country market town. Crawley isn't beautiful, tranquil countryside, and Crawley isn't a seaside town, which is what the rest of West Sussex is. Crawley, for West Sussex, is an out-of-sight, out-of-mind outlier. And that means the most important concerns of the majority of West Sussex residents are not always the same concerns as those of Crawley residents. That's not particularly anybody's fault. That's just a reality of our geographic location and an urban makeup compared to the rest of West Sussex. And I think, unfortunately, because of that, West Sussex has failed us. It's failed to deliver alternative travel routes to try and ease congestion on our roads. It's failed to sort out our parking. It's failed to find a solution to the Three Bridges entrance rework that enables a right turn. It's failed to prevent our underpasses from flooding with terrible consequences. And it's failed to prevent our 24/7 walk-in health service cutting hours overnight. The list goes on and on. So in my mind, there's no doubt that the current West Sussex setup has led to Crawley's residents being failed. But the question is, what new solution might prevent those failures for the next 50 years? And I think that the only solution is to have Crawley as an integral, central part of the proposal, with the proposal localised around Crawley as best we can. This will guarantee our residents' issues are given the right priority. That's putting the residents of Crawley first. Now, whether the best solution looks north, looks south, or looks in both directions, I don't know yet. Talking about elections at the moment, there's a rather important election going on in Rome, the conclave for the next pope. And for those of you who, like me, have seen the film about conclave, one of the key themes from that film is that the greatest sin is certainty. And yet our colleagues opposite are absolutely certain that we shouldn't consider looking north as an option for us. And just to be clear, this isn't us suggesting that New Haven should link up with Dieppe through an insurmountable water border. No, it's for many of us, it's our family, our friends and our colleagues who just happen to live a few miles further north than us. There could be many benefits to us linking up with Reigate and Banstead, as the report makes clear. We have similar urban makeups, a shared significant and growing economy with the same priorities, a shared hospital and health services, similar housing pressures, similar communities either working in our town's industrial areas or commuting up to London. There's a large weight of evidence supporting this proposal, including the reports attached to it. This isn't a back of the fag packet proposal. This has been put together by professionals who understand and care deeply about local government. And it's also important to note that the Council of Reigate and Banstead do support it. That's not to say there won't also be challenges, some of which our colleagues opposite have highlighted. And we'll all, if this is the proposal that's selected, then we'll all need to work together to try and mitigate those options. However, as the report makes clear, we're not ruling out any options at the moment with West Sussex, and it might well be the solution we end up with in some form, and that might be the option this council prefers. But at this point in time, I can't be certain, and I don't know how you can be, that the best option for the residents of Crawley doesn't involve looking north in some way, as well as possibly looking east, west or south. But the most important issue to me is making sure Crawley and its residents are front and centre, not out of sight and not out of mind as they are at the moment. That's why I'll be supporting this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm quite used to seeing Councillor Crowe get excited, but today he's really hot under the collar, and I do wonder what's actually lighting his fire, whether he's got some personal interest in all this at the end of the day, and perhaps he's looking down towards Chichester and his more comfortable seats down there, or maybe they're going to be threatened. Anyway, that's besides the point. Our Chief Executive just began this meeting today by outlining exactly what the procedure was. And he made it very clear that we're not making any hard and fast decisions tonight. We are simply keeping our options open. And as Councillor Russell said, what we are providing for our residents is choice. Now, Councillor Crowe sat there and said himself, I don't know which option is best for Crawley. But at the same time, he wants us to shut down one of the options and not even look at it. So before we even start, he doesn't know, but he doesn't want one of the options on the table. Now, from my point of view, is we look at all options and then we decide what's best for Crawley. Now, Crawley, was a little small market town. It was a market town, a very small place. And a place that I remember because I was actually born here. I was born here in Princess Road in Crawley a long time ago, far longer than I like to care about at times. But it was before Crawley, as we say, became Crawley. But it was here already. But in that time, 80 years has gone past. And in 80 years, people have come to Crawley with a vision of making a new and a better life for themselves and their families. And it isn't just those first people that came, the people we like to call the pioneers, the people that came here who originally built the first part of the town. It's been wave after wave of people who have come here with that same vision, with that same idea. Let's grow, let's rejoice, let's make a great place to live. Now, those people have a really important voice. The people that have gone, there are people that made the town who are not here now. There are people who came, as people have said here, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, who made this a place. And there are people still coming today. And down the road, into the future, there will still be people coming to Crawley because this is a town that grows. Now, we have a huge responsibility. We have been just parachuted in without any warning at all, virtually. We now have the responsibility to make the right decisions for our people, for those people who've gone before, for those people who are making their lives here now, and for those people who will come in the future. We have to preserve that legacy and make sure that that legacy is carried on into the future. We are the guardians of the next steps, and we take that responsibility on this side of the chamber extremely seriously. We have a lot to protect in Crawley. We have a great economy. We have housing that doesn't exist anywhere else on either side of the border. We have fantastic infrastructure that's been provided in this town. We have K2, we have the football ground, we have Three Bridges football ground, we have the Horse Theatre, we have fantastic parks, we have fantastic facilities for our children. Many people who live in Crawley don't realise that these facilities are not provided in other places in the country. They're provided here in Crawley, and again, by the consecutive waves of people who've come here to make this a better place. Now, one thing that I'm very sure of in Crawley is that Crawley embraces change. Crawley has always embraced change, and I think it always will into the future. So therefore, change is not easy, change is hard to come by, change is difficult for anyone. No one likes change. We all like to jog along the way it's always been. But sometimes change is really important. It makes us look at what we've got now. How are we served now by West Sussex? How could we be served by a different combination of things? I've got some doubts about West Sussex and how it's served us in the past. But West Sussex hasn't always been great, Councillor Crowe and Councillor Lanza, has not always been great for Crawley, and I'm sure plenty of people could give us a list. But what I'd like to do is have all options on the table. And I would like it if you shared that with us. Because, yes, we represent all the residents of Crawley. And I don't like you saying, oh, we've been out and talked to them. You haven't talked to anybody. You haven't talked to many people at all. And sometimes it's the question you ask is the answer you get. Be very careful what you ask, because you don't always get the answers you need. And you should be reassuring our residents and making sure that they have confidence in that their representatives will do a good job for them.
Thank you. I have now gone through the list of requested speakers. Are there any further members wishing to speak? Please press the button now. Councillor Burgess.
Yes, I've listened with quite a lot of interest, but my colleagues know and appreciate that I've not made up my mind. I'm one of those few who can see both sides of the argument. And with this decision, I'm having difficulty. So I am here, not as the voice of my party, not as the voice of this council, not even as the voice of my colleagues, but I am here as the voice of those who really matter, my residents, of which I am one, the people of Crawley. Personally, I can appreciate the need to forward several ideas for consideration regarding proposed devolution. Personally, I am uncertain which would be the best for Crawley and the people of Crawley, although at this stage no preference has been stated. Personally, I see this as an undemocratic process, foisted upon us with little warning, little choice and little time. As a side issue, I was not happy when elections were cancelled. I appreciate the word suspended is preferred, but to stop democratic elections, wrong. Did the women of this country not fight for the right to vote? Was such a vote not given to all people eventually because of such actions and determination? I hung my head in shame when my residents were not allowed to use their democratic right to vote. But to continue, I believe some of my constituents are loath to join with parts of Surrey, and some are loath to join the rest of West Sussex. In fact, I've got an email here, recently received from a resident. Yes, I do receive them. I do talk to my residents, as others have questioned. This particular resident has asked me to put a stop to things. He wants to know why we haven't been, residents haven't been contacted or spoken with, or why they haven't been allowed to have a say. And I must say, I agree with him. Now, Councillor Jaggard also alluded to this. Residents have not been asked, but residents in other places have. So I can only voice concerns on my residents' behalf and on behalf of Crawley. I agree with Councillor Jaggard. Our residents have not been asked. I've not been asked, really. So I'm asking myself, what is the best for Crawley, the breadbasket of West Sussex, with Gatwick Airport as a valuable seat? Will this going forward be the best for Crawley and our residents? And I also question why the Boundary Commission were not involved. From the notes here, it appears they were consulted, but that is not quite the same as allowing a non-political organisation to view the required boundaries in a non-political way. So I must ask, how much input did they have and were they really listened to? Now, looking around this chamber, recommendation 1 could probably go forward for consideration. Okay. Although, as many of my residents are so concerned with the idea, as voiced in recommendation 1, I feel perhaps on behalf of them, I need to give them a voice. And I might vote against this recommendation, although I'm pretty sure that if I do, the proposal will probably still go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to bring some of the facts on the table as well. I think lots politically has been said and exceptional economic case been mentioned a few times. So I thought it's probably, I wasn't on the list to speak, but I thought it's important to remind what we're talking about over here, and then just a glimpse of it, not the full detail, and people can read the full document within their own times. And we all know, given the government has placing sustained economic growth at the top of its agenda, and given that it wishes local government through reorganisation to play its part in delivering that, then surely the option, we talked about option and choices quite a lot of times today, and on both sides. So surely the option of establishing a cross-boundary unitary with Reigate and Banstead should have full consideration. We should not leave it. We should discuss. We should think about it. So having the choices to our residents clearly laid down. The figure speaks for themselves. The two authorities combined would have an economy worth 13.5 billion per annum. Crawley as an economy on its own already punches well above its weight, given its small geographic size. 2% of land mass, and we generate 26% of West Sussex economy. Both combined with Reigate and Banstead, it would have one of the largest economies in the whole of the South East, an equivalent to the size of Milton Keynes. Crawley and Reigate Banstead are combined a huge contributor to the employment base in the South East, with almost 160,000 jobs. This is significantly bigger than both Brighton and Hove and Croydon. Not only are the two areas together already a massive economy at regional level, there is amazing potential for the two areas to achieve sustained economic growth, particularly if driven by a single coherent unitary authority with Gatwick Airport at its core. Gatwick is one of the world's busiest single runway airport with an economic campus which comprises over 20,000 jobs. The government has stated it is minded to approve the expansion of Gatwick Airport. This would see the emergency runway to the north of the existing runway be upgraded, increasing capacity by a third, with a growth trajectory for the airport into the second half of this century. There is an incredible opportunity for Crawley and Reigate Banstead Unitary Authority with Gatwick at its core to harness significant sustainable economic growth, jobs and business investment in the immediate hinterland of the airport. A single authority would make a huge difference to overcoming the logistical challenge to make things happen. There are commercial development opportunities immediately to the north of the airport in Reigate and Banstead. To the south of the airport is located up to 600 hectares of land currently safeguarded, originally for a second runway. If released from safeguarding, it is estimated that this land could unlock major business investment and economic growth worth tens of thousands of more jobs for the area. Given the advent of the airport's northern runway proposal as a second runway, there is arguably no longer a need for this very large swath of land to the south to remain safeguarded. The substantial potential for this land to unlock major commercial businesses and jobs investment is given its excellent location next to the airport, to the north of the Manor Royal Business District, and very close to the motorway network. Land around Gatwick Airport is already coming forward to support economic growth. Gatwick Green, which we all know, and a located site in Crawley's local plan, will see a further 2,000 jobs, an additional 79 million GVA per annum. A single unitary authority with the airport at its core could focus as a priority on unlocking this huge economic growth opportunity. Conversely, there is a real risk that this opportunity will be missed if the airport's economic hinterland is divided into two and Crawley and Reigate Banstead remain separated at both the unitary authority and mayoral strategic authority level. Arguably, it may well worsen the constraints compared to the current arrangements when the both areas have been part of the cost to capital sub-region. Just to conclude, the economic growth arguments for a single unitary authority, combined Crawley and Reigate Banstead, are compelling. If it doesn't happen, how else would tens of thousands more jobs and major economic growth uplift can be unlocked? It's a question for us to discuss and to share about. But overall, I think there's a lot of economic sense when we talk about these things, and I fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually originally from Redhill, so when I saw this, I saw a bit of giddy excitement to see Southwards and Sidlow in the supplementary paper, because that's where I used to live. So in what I'm going to say, there is absolutely no dislike of Reigate or Redhill or any of our friends to the north. But you have to ask yourself, what is actually the purpose of local government? It's ultimately to serve and represent a local community. And ultimately, Crawley and Reigate are just not a single local community. I've lived in both places, and they're just not the same, and they're definitely not one local community. People in Reigate, they didn't elect a council to represent Crawley, and people in Crawley didn't elect a council to represent Reigate. And even if you Frankenstein them together, that would still always be the case. People in Crawley would be voting for Crawley, and people in Reigate would be voting for Reigate, because it's not a historic community in the same way that Sussex is. I hear some people say there's a South London community. Someone opposite said that, but I mean that's just nonsense. You can't create out of nothing a local community in the way that this proposal is kind of claiming to do. And it's obvious to everyone in the town, which is why you go in any Facebook group, look at any email from a resident, and they'll tell you, we don't want to be part of Surrey, we don't want to be part of this. And that's all fine, because what you guys are saying is, well, let's just keep our options on the table. So what I'm about to say might be completely wrong, and if it is, I can see Councillor Lunning saying yes before I've said what it is. I can see. And if I'm wrong, I'd be grateful if Councillor Jones or Councillor Mullins could tell me I'm wrong or tell me I'm a tin hat foil conspiracy theorist. But my understanding from speaking to officers is that if we put this proposal through tonight, there is a chance that central government will run with this proposal and they'll say, oh, that sounds great, you're both in favour of it, let's go ahead with it. And that'll be it. That'll be our once-in-a-lifetime chance to shape local government gone, because on a false prospectus that we were leaving our options open, the government looked at it and said, oh, actually, that's great, yeah, go for that. And if that is the case, if I'm right, then, and some of you may have genuinely been mistaken thinking we're keeping our options open, then that's something for you to consider. And if I'm wrong, then I'd be grateful if, one of the councillors opposite could just confirm to me that that will definitely not happen. There will definitely not be a scenario would a government take this option out of our hands once this proposal is put forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belbin.
She's got the magic touch. I haven't got. Thank you, Heather. I would just like to. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I've heard a lot from my Labour colleagues across the side about having choice, and you know what's best for Crawley. Why haven't we asked the residents these questions? Yeah. It reminds me a lot of a debate that was held on TV in 2016 when your leader, Ed Miliband, was caught on camera saying, why should I give you a referendum when I think we should stay in Europe? And I think he caught a cold on that because people like to be involved and they want their opinions considered. They don't want politicians making up their minds what is best for them. Reigate and Crawley are very different culturally. And I've heard someone refer to West Sussex as small market towns. Well, Reigate isn't a massive, sprawling urban area like we are. I also find it very arrogant to assert that there won't be the unlocking of land if the councils are run, not joined, and Reigate might join Tambridge, and that land will still be unlocked and be helping local people. Having Crawley working with Reigate isn't going to guarantee this unlocking, and I think it's very arrogant of my colleagues over there to think that only we can produce that unlocking. We do represent our residents, and I'm sure you've had emails in from residents concerned about this. Crawley has got its own identity, and it has been served well by West Sussex. I'm sorry to say there's been a lot of investment in Crawley. £60 million was invested. The bus thing was put in by West Sussex. So to say that we have been ignored is just not true. So I just think that we ought to do a bit more consultation with our residents and stop spouting, we only know what's best for Crawley. Thank you.
As we do not have any further speakers, can I move to the seconder, Councillor Chris Mullins?
Thank you. Councillor Belbin, you tried to make a comparison with Reigate and Crawley. I would say Crawley doesn't compare to anywhere in West Sussex or Sussex actually either, because it is unique, and it's been built uniquely, and so I don't think trying to fit two comparisons together is what we're talking about here. A lot of the Conservative input has been about consultation, but you can't consultate or go to the people with questions until you know what the case is. And we've got to build the case. We've got to get feedback. We've got to know where we're going, and we've got to be able to put detail together before we can go out and tell people, or else we're just doing sloganising. Now, I listen very carefully to Duncan Crowe, and look, he's often outrageous in this chamber, but I just am baffled with him now because I think he's been taking lessons off of Nigel Farage. Because he's been throwing out these awful slogans and statements which could only come through Trumpism to Nigel Farage and then on to you. But the trouble is you're not as good as Nigel and you're making a much poorer job of it. And I feel quite sorry for you, actually. I mean, I think as a leader, you didn't make a speech that I thought was worthy of that post. And I'm sorry to say that, but you normally do better. But you've done very badly tonight. Now, I want to say that where we are going is into a situation that probably none of us wanted to be. I would still want Crawley to be existing as it is now. But that's not an option that's been given to us. We have to look at what options there are and to look for the best deal. And that might even include some negotiations and some arguments with the other half, whoever they are, about what we retain in Crawley and what we control and look after. And I think it's very important that we have a strong voice in this situation. We've got a lot to offer either council in the circumstances, and therefore we've got a lot of bargaining chips to use, and I think we've got to use them to the fullest in where we go and what we do. So actually having two options is to our advantage, tactically, because we can always say, look, there's another option. We haven't got to go with you if they're quite keen in the end to have us. So we've got to be able to make deals, and we've got to look after Crawley. And that's all I care about is Crawley. It's a town I moved back into in the early 70s. It's a place that I shall stay until the Lord takes me. I've no intention of leaving this town at any time. And I've already bought my plot in Snell Hatch, thank you. And that's where I'm going to be. So that's how much I think of Crawley. I think it's a great place. And I always want to be there. But the economic case does stand up. And I listened to Bob a bit, but the economic case does stand up for the Reigate proposal. And then we'll have to see where that goes. I'm thinking now, when I was thinking today at home about this, I thought I wanted to say something about Crawley's legacy. And I went through and thought about 1983. 1983 was when I got on this council, before all of you, I think. And I looked at the names of the people I worked with, on both sides, on the Conservative side as well. And names like Alf Pegler, Bert Crane, Tony Edwards came up straight away, obvious ones. Arthur Locke, Bill Buck and people like that. Jim Brenda Smith and Bob Rudd, John Mortimer, anybody remember him, and the Clays. But then I looked down the list further. There's Dave Barry, Sally Blake, Alan Quine, Ken Dunn, Colin Coyson and Ian Gordon. And Bert Humphreys, God bless his soul, watch out, there's a Bert about. I respected a lot of those people because they were what I used to call One Nation Tories. They were open to debate and discussion and had not gone as far right as you have gone, or indeed as my party's gone. We're all getting dragged these days more to the right, which I have some resistance about. But there we go, that's what's happening. Look,
thank you, Councillor Chris Mullins.
Oh, I'm finished.
Yes, I told
Yes,
you.
you are.
I've only just started, Mayor.
Okay, you got to stop.
Listen, I'll make one point then. Much was said about us being 20
10
miles
seconds,
from
please.
London. I would say we're 40 to 45 miles from Chichester.
Thank you. Before I come back to Councillor Jones, I will bring in the Chief Executive to cover any technical points. Ian Duke, please.
So in the debate, there were three matters of process that I think it's right for me just to respond to. The first was about the Boundary Commission. There is a role for the Boundary Commission, but it comes later on in the process, and that's the process that's been set out by government, so it's not been a local decision not to. The government is asking us to draw these boundaries around existing districts and borough boundaries where possible. can possibly change that, but that's what they're asking us to do. And then further along, if there is a boundary commission requirement, that would be for government's commission. So that's the reason it's happening that way. So I hope that answers that one. The second one is the engagement one, and how that's been done locally versus in Surrey. The engagement we're trying to line with authorities across West Sussex, and to do it all at the same time because of that West Sussex consideration. The Surrey engagement all took place at largely the same time because they had all of the available options on the table at the same time. It's a similar kind of conundrum as we've got in terms of the decision tonight, that we've got a foot in two camps running at two different timeframes. And within the West Sussex, the intention is to do resident engagement over the summer following full council that we will have in July. So the intention is there, but we have the timeframe issue again, which brings back to Councillor Ramsey's point about the risk. I think the risk is set out in the report. You know, that at the end of this, the government will take this off us and start to make a decision, whichever option goes forward. I think with this decision, the intention is to be loud and clear to government that the council hasn't stated a preference. There's a reference to that within the proposal as well. And my assumption is that we'll be in any covering letter to make clear what the council's position is, that as preference has not been stated at this point. But as I say, the report is clear that there is that question if the government decides to just press ahead.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, you may now exercise your right to reply. You have 5 minutes. Please also formally move the recommendation. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to members for an interesting debate. Councillor Crowe is an expert on council service cuts, admittedly, but there's no reason why our public services should be any worse off due to its immediate boundaries. There's no basis for that. From what he's been saying tonight, Councillor Crowe also appears to have spent a lot of time looking at the election results. Now, I can genuinely say we haven't looked at any vested interest. It has been following the facts and statistics and building the best case for our communities, which I think has been made more than clear tonight. I think it's also fair to say that whichever way we step, Crawley's voice becomes part of a much larger set of arrangements where our individual voices may hold less sway. But that is true in whichever direction we step. And Councillor Crowe repeats his ridiculous conspiracy theory that we're going to be absorbed into London. I sort of echo Councillor Chariton here. You know, Councillor Crowe, take your tinfoil hat off for a moment and give it a bit of a polish. There is not, and there has never been any suggestion of us becoming a London borough. Just to address, Councillor Jagod talked about Reigate and Banstead's meeting, and she was right to. The majority of councillors at Reigate and Banstead voted to support their cabinet submission of this joint report. That's democracy. And I believe that their cabinet has now, as I speak, has now confirmed it this evening. Hawley Town Council and Salford Parish Council have also sent letters of support. So I think Councillor Burgess and others mentioned things about public engagement. Well, for public engagement, it needs the full facts. And as far as West Sussex is concerned, they haven't finished preparing that. And as I said earlier at the beginning of this, there will be more engagement, and the government is also consulting, so that the public will not be excluded from all of this. There's been a lot of claims. We all don't want this. None of that's substantiated. Thank you, but I prefer evidence rather than assertions. And this submission gives it, would be what I say. Councillor Lanza mentions the size of the population. Well, this will be the same size as existing unitaries such as Brighton Hove. It's perfectly feasible size. There are many such sized authorities working perfectly well. There's been some perhaps emotional contributions to tonight's debate, and that is to be expected. This is our future, and it is difficult to forget our past when that is being discussed. But brave hearts need brave heads as well. The report and submission that I hope the Council will support tonight in time for the Cabinet to make a decision isn't about moving Crawley anywhere. It's about keeping all our options available for the residents of Crawley and ensuring that when the time comes, we take the one that's in their best interest. That best keeps their identity and their choices intact. And there's a lot to unpack with that. I don't dispute that. Sussex has been described tonight almost like it's some article of faith by some of the opposition members, certainly lyrically, but its current boundaries are a lot more recent than some people think and have moved around over the years. I mean, one of the quirks of the town's history is that the current borough is actually made up of 3 traditional counties, with the original boundary with East Sussex being just east of the High Street and everything north of County Oak, hence its name, having previously been Surrey. The reality is that the current county boundaries have only existed, current ones, since 1974, and for a time briefly contained Hawley as well. To conclude, Madam Mayor, there will be many borough councillors, present and past, some long since departed, who will grieve the loss of what has been a fine, high-performing council that has consistently delivered for its residents. But it is our job now, and for the foreseeable future, to attempt to make whatever comes forward to replace this council the best it can be, and its geography will be absolutely crucial to that. We must set up something that will perform and, just as important, be financially sustainable as an authority in the long term. We believe this submission readily satisfies all those requirements. We have a duty to ensure that Crawley is not swallowed up by a council that doesn't reflect its values and would be uninterested at best in its development or improvement, if not actively hostile. We owe it to the people we serve. We owe it to the original vision of the Newtown pioneers who built Crawley as a modern town that was forward-looking and with the promise to its people who made the new town their home that their interests and their welfare would come first. And on this side of the council chamber, at least, we will do our duty on this. But if people want to criticise this council for that, let them do so, because I believe trying to protect the interests of our local residents is absolutely worth it and what we were fundamentally elected to do. Madam Mayor, this might turn out to be one of the most significant meetings to have been held in Crawley Borough's council's history, or it may not. We can't predict the government's decision before they make it. But just finally, just on council tax, we do currently have lower council tax, but harmonisation would have to take place and would see overall tax rises possibly decrease, not necessarily increase. The level that was set would need to be agreed. So I wish to formally move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We now move to the voting. We now move to the voting. I will be taking a vote on each recommendation separately. Councillor Crowe.
Madam Mayor, if I could just remove my tinfoil hat for one moment and request a recorded vote, please.
I just check, is it just the first item or do you want both? Recommendation.
I think recommendation 1 will be enough, Madam Mayor.
That's fine. As a recorded vote has been requested, I'm going to invite the Democracy and Data Manager to conduct the voting process on my behalf.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarification purposes, the recorded vote is solely on recommendation 2.1.1, support the submission to government of a joint proposal for local government reorganisation with Reigate and Banstead Borough Council. Councillor Abu Mossa. You don't need to use your microphones, just shout the result. Councillor Abu Mossa. Thank you. Councillor Ashraf. Councillor Ayling. Councillor Barrett. Councillor Belbin. Councillor Bidwell. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Bushnell. Councillor Cheriton. Councillor Crowe. Councillor Hart. Councillor Hellier. Councillor Hilton. Councillor Irvine. Councillor Jaggard. Councillor Jahans. Councillor Jones. Councillor Imtazaz Khan. Councillor Kieran Khan. Councillor Lanza. Councillor Lunnan. Councillor Chris Mullins. Councillor Sue Mullins. Councillor Mangali. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Noyce. Councillor Patel. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Rana. Councillor Russell. And finally, Councillor Sivaraja. I can confirm the vote in favour 21, votes against 10. There are no abstentions. I confirm recommendation 2.1.1 was carried.
I call for vote on recommendation 2 as set out at 2.1.2 of the report. This is for full council to support continued efforts to develop proposals to government for local government reorganisation across West Sussex and Sussex as a whole. Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour? That's unanimous. So with this, I can confirm that the recommendation 2 has been carried. There are no further items of business. I declare this extraordinary meeting of the Council closed. I respectfully request that all councillors leave the chamber swiftly to allow the room to be set up for the Cabinet meeting, which will be starting in approximately 15 minutes' time. Thank you.